Hello and welcome to Rising Earth News. Today I'm here with Joe Brindle, founder of the Teach a Future campaign, who believes that our education systems need to change to reflect the urgency of the climate emergency. So, hi Joe, thanks so much for talking to us today. To
Hi.
start off, if you could just tell us a bit about what the Teach a Future campaign is.
I mean, we're students, like everyone on the campaign is students, and we've recognised that currently the education system that we're going through doesn't adequately prepare us for the topic of climate change. I mean, the purpose of education is like to prepare us for our futures, and for my generation and the generations to come, those are going to be futures really greatly affected by climate change, and therefore our education needs to prepare us for that.
So you've said a bit about you don't think that our current education system teaches enough about climate change. So could you expand a bit on that?
Yeah, I mean, currently climate change is pushed aside to just a couple of subjects, so like optional geography, GCSE, and a very, very little bit in science. But the thing is, climate change is an issue that affects all aspects of a person's life, so it needs to be taught about in all aspects of the education system, so from primary to tertiary, and in all subjects. So, and it's also like really important that everyone coming out of education understands like sustainable principles, because whatever job you end up doing, it's going to be really important, and that kind of thinking is necessary if we want to create kind of a sustainable society and prevent ecological collapse.
So what is it that Teach the Future campaign is asking of the education system?
We recognise that climate change isn't taught about well, so one of the key things we want the government to introduce a review into the current climate emergency learning entitlements, basically to what degree should students learn about climate change and how well is that being fulfilled currently. I mean, we did a survey, and about 4% of students feel they know a lot about climate change, and really that number should be something like 98% or something, so that's just a real big issue. Additionally, we think that teachers should be trained to teach about climate change and sustainability. Once again, the survey found that 68% of teachers want to teach more about climate change, but 75% don't feel they have the adequate training to teach on the topic. Whenever we've talked to the government and the Department for Education about this, their classic response is just that teachers have the freedom to teach about it if they want, so therefore it's not really a problem. But the thing is, it's clear that teachers don't have that freedom because they don't actually have the necessary skills to teach about it. And then our final demand, or our final ask, is this Climate Emergency Education Act, which is a bill that we've written as students, the first education bill ever written by students. And it sets out a bunch of things that would massively change the education system to focus on sustainability and climate change better. One of the main things it does is it sets an expectation on all schools to teach about climate change. It provides funding for youth-led campaigning, and it also provides funding and creates a necessity for all schools to be net zero by 2030, which is really important as part of the government's current plan for net zero by 2050.
So you've mentioned that everyone who's behind the Teach the Future campaign is a student. So could you tell us a bit about why you think it's so important that this campaign is youth-led and that the youth get involved in campaigning for climate change education?
I think we recognise as young people that like climate change is going to affect us much more, like and future generations to come. And I don't think it should be our responsibility, but the responsibility is kind of falling on us because of the lack of action from previous generations. And so yeah.
And actually, I'm interested in knowing a little bit about your personal experience and why you decided to get involved in this campaign and in general in the youth strikes.
So I've been a campaigner at the UK Student Climate Network, which is the group which organises the school strikes in the UK, since maybe March last year. And a bit before then, I kind of I knew that climate change was a thing, vaguely. I knew there were environmental issues, but I didn't really have a good grasp on it. I knew about global warming, but in my head, it was some real like distant future thing for future generations in hundreds of years' time, which might happen, but we're not even sure about, like that kind of thing. That is what I've been led to believe, and partly due to a faulty education, I think. And I've been to like 3 different schools, so I've had plenty of opportunities to be taught about it, and that kind of shows that the issue is kind of like widespread. It's not just isolated to 1 or 2 places. But then I think I saw one of Greta Thunberg's speeches on YouTube, and at the same time I watched a documentary about the drought in Malawi that's been happening over the last like decade or something, and the devastation that's caused. And it kind of hit me suddenly that climate change is happening now, and it's causing death now, and it's going to get worse. And that kind of coincidences of events like kind of led me to really realizing that I had to do something myself, and it was perfect timing as well, because then like a bit later was like the first youth strike in the UK. I went to that, and then that month after I joined the UK Student Climate Network. So yeah.
So obviously right now with the pandemic, there's been a bit of a like hold on things, everyone's having more time to kind of reflect. What would you say to people as how they could use this as an opportunity to maybe educate themselves a bit more about climate change?
Yeah, so normally I'd say something like, go on the streets and protest, but obviously that's not allowed at the moment, and understandably so. So I think the best thing we can do is educating ourselves, and there are loads of great resources out there, like literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of great resources. I think the United Nations Education Group have been doing some things, and World's Largest Lesson, and yeah, there are loads. You can become, if you're a teacher, you can become like a United Nations certified teacher, certified climate teacher using an online course and that kind of thing. So it's just loads of great resources out there.
Yeah, so I know you're also involved in UKSCN, aren't you? So if you could tell us a bit about what that is and how people can get behind that as well.
Yeah, so we're a large group of mostly under 18s spread across the country. We're split into regional groups as well as kind of a national organising team. We've got loads of different working groups, and we've got and yeah, we've been striking since February last year, mostly every month. We had a huge strike in September. We got adults and young people involved, and it was like the part of this globally the largest climate mobilization ever in history, and it was amazing that us young people were able to organize something so big and powerful. And yeah, we've been organizing behind this thing called the Green New Deal, which is basically this kind of set of principles or a policy plan to create a much greener and fairer society.
So how does it make you feel when the government and the authorities start to actually listen to you? It must be quite hopeful and really feel like you're making that change.
Yeah, there's definitely been times I felt really hopeful. For example, when the government declared a climate emergency, that felt like a really good step forward. We've just been a few months into campaigning, and UKSCN and Extinction Rebellion had just kind of started up, and that felt like a really good move.
So some people would say their excuse or their reason for not having so much climate education in schools is because they're worried that kids will get scared because it is so daunting and it can be overwhelming. But what would you say in response to that?
No, I completely recognise that climate change is a really scary topic, but the fact is that young people are going to find out about it either way. Like, we have our phones and all that kind of thing, and the social media, it's all over the place, so it's unavoidable. But the thing about the internet is it's also covered in either difficult to understand facts or in often like lies and that kind of thing, false fake news and all that. So I think it's important that climate change is taught about in a sensitive and truthful way, and that's why education is much more important than just doing a bit of research, because it's a difficult topic to do research on. That's coming from someone who's done it. And so, like, if you're an 8-year-old and you're finding out about climate change, it's much better than it comes from a knowledgeable teacher who can teach about it in a way which doesn't scare you, rather than it comes from some really daunting Facebook page or something.
Yeah, and how do you think it is that you do teach in a way that kind of doesn't scare people? Because there's a new really big phenomena of eco-anxiety, especially in young people. And how do you think that you could combat that, especially in education?
Yeah, I don't have all the answers on that one specifically, but one of the key parts of this bill we've written is particularly funding into the research and specific allocation to the teachers can be trained to teach about it in a way that is sensitive, and so that kind of like the best ways to teach about it sensitivity can be found. I know that the Climate Psychology Alliance are working on it a lot, and they've sponsored Teach the Future. They've supported it, so it shows that kind of like psychologists know a lot about this, and specifically focusing on climate anxiety, recognize that climate education is actually really important.
Yeah, and personally, I mean, it's just an opinion really, but I think the way that I found as a way to kind of combat my own eco-anxiety, which I was suffering with, was to focus on kind of activism or looking at the solutions, even like through this and meeting loads of amazing people who are, really, really already living sustainably and changing the way that we run things. And that's been really inspiring for me. It's kind of given me the hope to keep going and to believe that we can kind of turn this all around before, you know, the global warming becomes unbearable, kind of.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, yeah, I think I found it myself as well that acting myself, doing something myself really has made it much easier for me. And that's why also part of our bill, so I should have mentioned, is that it kind of creates funding for youth-led climate social action in every school. And there's these kind of things that are already done in some countries to a certain degree, and we're kind of just mirroring that, but like basically some funding will be provided so that schools can do things, whether it be like start an eco group which plants some trees, or do an initiative to do that, and that kind of thing. Providing funding and kind of resources to do that will hopefully help students a lot.
Finally, I would like to know what a sustainable future looks like to you.
It's a good question. I mean, if we're looking ahead of it, I think the UK should be net zero by 2030. I don't know how realistic that is, but that's my hope. And I hope we can do that in a way, we can make that decarbonisation effort in a way that is just and a fair transition. I think there should be millions of well-paid kind of sustainable jobs. And I think we should be working to kind of heal the damage we've done to nature. But additionally, I think everyone coming out of the education system should understand sustainability and climate change so that we can find the solutions to the crisis we're in right now, but also prevent other crises from emerging in the future.
Yeah, that's a lovely answer, and I hope that 2030 looks the same as you want it to too.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for all your really insightful answers, and it's really interesting to learn a bit more about the Teach the Future campaign. So thank you so much.
Thanks.